All right, welcome to 2026 VCT. That is STP's virtual conference on teaching. I am Blake Nielsen, the director of STP's virtual conference on teaching. And we had an exciting day yesterday for day one where we got to engage in some workshops. We had hands-on opportunities to explore AI, whether it was creating things or learning about skill development. We learned a little bit about specification grading and got to explore some of that. And we got to spend our morning in the Top Inc., the Teaching of Psychology incubator, and working through some projects. So if you joined us in day one, I hope you had a ton of fun. If you're here for the first time in day two, welcome. We have even more fun in store for you today. As we get in it, I do want to do a couple special updates and reminders on what we have in store for today. So our very first task, our very first thing that we're going to do is recognize this amazing sponsor that we have for our 2026 event, which is APA Publishing. APA Publishing is making today possible. So thank you, APA Publishing, for helping us bring an amazing group of teachers together to learn about a very important topic and explore some of these exciting ideas that all of our presenters are going to share today, but really to kick off with Regan and Elizabeth. So that is very exciting. So special shout out APA Publishing. That is amazing, and you are awesome. We appreciate you as a sponsor. I also want to recognize our steering committee. VCT has two amazing steering committee members that made today possible. That is Kruti Surti and Amanda Woodward. So I see you too, and I appreciate all the work that you put into making today happen. All right, moving right along, I alluded to our keynote. That's what's going to start things off. We will hear from Regan and Elizabeth here momentarily. I also wanted to give a very quick preview to what's following afterwards. So we will have 3 blocks of 25-minute programs that are going to show up right after our keynote. We're going to hear from Frank. We're going to hear from Sarah. And these two are going to be walking us through exploring ways to engage our students, right? Thinking about the content, the examples, and even how we might be able to use AI in that respect. We're also going to be learning a little bit about, in block 2, from Amy and Rick, some of the innovative approaches to course design through gamification and leveraging asynchronous formats. And block 3, once we get to it, we will learn a little bit from Jessica and Desita, and we are going to explore how to teach in the broader world and navigating some of the difficult conversations that might be taking place in the current moment. So that is what we have in store. I'm very excited to hear from all these lovely individuals and hear some of the great teaching tips that they have for us. If you're the type of person that didn't see all my emails, and I've been sending you a lot, and you would like to have that program in front of you right now, you can scan the QR code that's up on the screen. You can also keep track of all the time zone differences, because I know we got folks up in Alaska, we got folks on the East Coast, and people in between, and we want to make sure that you show up in the right spot. So you have that option to check out that time zone graphic that we have up there to make sure that you are showing up in the right spot. But before we get too far into the weeds, and before I take even more time away from our amazing keynote address that we have, I alluded to our sponsor on the front end, and they want to give you all some books. So APA Publishing is giving away, we have some copies of Study Like a Champ and Teach Like a Champ. Now, Study has already come out, and I brought my personal copy today to show everybody. If you don't have this on their shelf, 2 of you are about to get this on your shelf, so we're going to get this into your hands here in a moment. And then Teach doesn't come out until June. So what I have done, just to make things exciting as we kick off a conference, is that I have put together a list of names for everybody that filled out the pre-conference survey and told us that they were coming today. And I have placed them onto the screen, and I'm going to give you all some books. So if I've done things correctly, y'all should see this lovely spinning wheel. We can do a nice little drum roll on our desks in our offices if we want to do that. And let's find out who's going to win these books. So first and foremost, let's give somebody some books. Oh, fantastic. So I am writing this down so I don't forget. Lisa, you are our lucky first winner to win Study Like a Champ. So you are the first Study Like a Champ winner. We will get this into your hands soon. All right, Lisa, let's see who's joining you. Clicking on our lovely spinning wheel. Tara, you are our next winner. Tara, like Lisa, we will make sure to get you a copy of Study. We have that already, and we will be able to ship that out your way. I'll follow up after the conference. Now, here's something that's coming out in June. In June, we have Teach Like a Champ, and our first winner with Teach is going to be Heather. So, Heather, if you are with us, you are singing your praises on the other end of the screen. Congrats, friends. You now are going to be the happy recipient of Teach coming in June. And then our final winner for Teach Like a Champ, another Heather joining the mix. Wow, that was not planned, but we have two Heathers that have just won Teach Like a Champ. Congratulations, Heathers. Congratulations, Tara. Congratulations, Lisa. It was always fun. Thank you, APA Publishing, for making today possible. Thanks for all the support and really just supporting good teachers and good teaching. So that's what we're going to focus on today. If you weren't one of our winners within that brief book giveaway, you can still be a winner by getting a discount code to get Teach Like a Champ on your shelves when it drops this June. And so thanks to APA Publishing, we have a promo code for folks, 15% off for everybody here right now to pre-order Teach Like a Champ, have free shipping, have that show up in your and put that to good use this summer for some lovely summer reading. So you can scan the QR code. That'll actually take you right to APA Publishing's website to pre-order now. And then the promo code when you get to that checkout phase is VCT15. VCT15. That is the promo code that you will need to use. I'll give you another reminder via email. But yeah, let's get excited. We have some really fun and exciting things we're going to be discussing today. So I am going to shift and I'm going to invite to the stage STP's president, Drew Christopher, to do a lovely opening announcement on our presenters for today. So for our presenters, and really for our presenter that's going to be announcing the keynote speakers, I just want to say a couple things about Drew. So Drew is currently a professor of psychological science at Albion College up in Michigan. He's been there since 2001, and he is serving as STP's president. If you haven't already seen it out there in the newsletters and all the announcements, Drew has 3 exciting presidential task forces that are taking place. We have promoting faculty well-being. We have preparing students to use AI in the workforce, and we have exploring a teaching certificate program. There's so much fun that's in store for us this year. Drew, we're really excited about your leadership in that space. So without further ado, I'm going to stop. I'm going to give you the opportunity to set the stage for today's keynote speakers. Drew.
Great. Thank you very much, Blake. Welcome to our keynote session. Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Today, we are going to be joined by 2 titans of the teaching of psychology and learning. That is Dr. Elizabeth Yost Hammer from Xavier University of Louisiana and Regan Gurung from Oregon State University. I'd be willing to bet that many of us have a spring break coming up here in the next couple weeks. Mine's 2 weeks off. Actually, it's about 335 hours, but who's counting? Who's counting, right? I'm just trying to find the energy to get through the next 335 hours, 2 weeks, whatever. The good news is we're in the right place today. If you're feeling anything like I'm feeling, and even if you're not, this is going to be one of the most inspirational next 80 minutes or so of your professional life, because together, these individuals bring more than 50 years of teaching experience and more than 20 years of experience directing centers for teaching and learning. They're both past presidents of Psych-Hi, and they have both been the recipient of the Charles L. Brewer Award for Distinguished Teaching in Psychology. Regan, as you know, is the author of Study Like a Champ, and Elizabeth is the former chief reader of the Advanced Placement Psychology Reading Program. And they have teamed up on this book called Teach Like a Champ, and I've got June 16th circled on my calendar to get a copy. I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get it in the wheel, but that's okay. They are here today to kind of help us navigate strategies to stay effective, stay focused, and at least in my case, stay energized to be an effective teacher. You've heard enough from me. Let's let Regan and Elizabeth take it away.
Wow, that was quite the exciting bit here. I mean, this is where I just want to say, you get one, you get one, you get one, you get one. And I wish, we could do that. But this is just an absolute thrill, absolute thrill. It is super to see so many people that we know. It is so many, it's so great to see so many people that we don't know. And hopefully we'll get to know and see at ACT or, at all the other teaching conferences. excited to get rolling, and we're going to take you on a, now that Blake has, and especially Blake has taken up so much of our time, we've now got less time to help you teach like a champ. But no, all those words
I am gonna
definitely appreciated.
comment
Yeah.
50 years combined, Drew. Like Regan and I prefer to say decades of experience.
Decades of
Decades of
experience. Yeah.
experience sounds so much better. Thank you for
No.
that introduction.
It was super. So, for all of us, for all of you we haven't met, Regan Gurung, Oregon State University, currently a professor of psychology. Also, especially in this context of teaching strong, I want to give a big shout out to where I spent 20 years, and I see Georgina, you're there. Big shout out to the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, where I spent 20 years and truly, truly learned to care about teaching with a group of just absolutely wonderful colleagues. And I think that's just so important. Elizabeth and I go way back as well. And I think it's just so important to think about that. So, Regan Gurung, Oregon State University, so thrilled to be with.
hmm And I'm Elizabeth Yost Hammer. Many of you know me by Liz, and I'm at Xavier University of Louisiana, which is also a really teaching centered institution. If you've heard me talk before, you've heard me say it's the only Catholic, historically Black school in the country. And we have a very strong mission, not just to promote social justice and humanity, but to create future leaders who are going to promote social justice and humanity. And so that's what kind of keeps me going. So I'm delighted to be here today and to present with Regan. Holy cow.
It's just a lot of fun to be with Elizabeth. And just a couple of things that we wanted to keep in mind is uh, we'd love to be there in person. We'd love to, we're glad. This is great that this is synchronous for most of you right now. And hello to all of you listening to this later. But especially for all of you here, if you do have thoughts or comments, please, please, please pop them into the chat, and we will both be paying as much attention to it as we can, because we do realize that that's one of the neatest things, is to be able to respond right away, or think about something or ask something. So please go ahead and pop it in there. We'll take a look, and one of us will try and get back and answer if there's something there. We will also, for those of you who make it to the end, even if you take a little stroll in between, we will also give you a QR code with all the slides, especially if you just want to go back and look at it offline and not in a recording. So. We've been thinking about this for a really long time. Drew, you alluded to this. It was just an absolute thrill for me to think about, who would I love to work with? And Elizabeth and I, both as social psychologists, both as people who've been at a teaching and learning center, have been talking about teaching and working with faculty and colleagues and instructors for a very, very long time. So we're super excited to do this. And right now seems like one of the most important times for us to actually really think about teaching and supporting teaching and teaching effectively and efficiently, because the times are tough, right? I mean, our title basically says, how do you do it when the going gets tough? Well, it's been tough. It's been tough. For example, you may see just today, and talk about timely, people, just today in the Chronicle of Higher Education, if it's still probably buried in your email, there's this. Look at that. Compensation, right? Absurd, insane. Now, I know we're not doing it for the money, right? But it's still it's tough. The pay is not great. That's one major issue that we have to deal with. But of course, that's not all, right? For the last few years, we've been looking at, especially in the last 2 years, we've just been seeing all the assaults on DEI. And closely related to that, of course, and my heart goes out to Minneapolis in particular, but everywhere where there are ICE issues, right? I mean, here on my campus at Oregon State University, I was teaching a class last term where every single one of my Latino students had somebody hassled by ICE. Every single one of them. Not some, not many, not most, every single one of them. So this is really something that weighs on us. I know it weighs on us on campus. We're out west. Portland has been one of those places that's had some issues, has been targeted in ways. So it's tense. And we teach in the middle of all of this, right? And if that's not all, right, we have AI. right? And I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. I love the affordances of AI, but there are still a lot of issues with it that need to be tackled, right? Lots of things that need to be tackled. And I know many of us nicely do not just think about it as a teaching, as a cheating issue, but it's still a lot to think about. It's still a lot to think about. How much should we know? What should we be doing? And the really good news is we'll be talking about that right here in the next hour or so. We will be talking about that. So before we get rolling, and we've got three really cool parts coming up for you, we wanted to answer one major we wanted to address the fact that this is not new, right? I mean, this book came out a long time ago. America's most embattled profession. Teaching is embattled and has been a long time, but I think I must acknowledge that right now in 2026, it's 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 been collecting the weight on our shoulders. COVID, George Floyd, this year, everything, it's just all out there, right? It's just out there. And it's not a surprise then that you see a lot of recent publications almost directly tackling burnout and support. And one I'm also really looking forward to, and it's particularly exciting because I know, Flower, that you're here. This is coming up pretty soon, and I love the title, and I love the bubbles. Flower, thank you. Looking forward to the joyful online teacher, and I think joyful is so important, right? Joyful, so important. So how can we be joyful? How can we have fun doing what we're doing? How can we keep going? Right? How can we keep going? Right? That's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. And yes, I'm going to lean into, yes, we may have been doing it for 50 years and we're still doing it and we want to still do it. Right? How do you do that? How do you do that? And that's what today is all about. So I guess I got to start here. Some of you may go, why champ? Elizabeth, why do we go with champ?
Well, here's the thing. Regan did a really cool book, Study Like a Champ, and we're like, let's make the companion piece. I love like so much in faculty development is faculty facing. And now as we've shifted out of our centers, kind of thinking about the student facing component. So that's one reason. But the real reason is Regan and I are huge football fans. Yes, I'm going to acknowledge there's all kinds of problems with American football. Lots of issues. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, how can I remain being a fan? So saying that up front. But we have been longtime football fans for so long, and we've talked football for so long. The New Orleans Saints, woo, always next year, always next semester. It's going to be kind of a theme. And then Green Bay back in the day. This whole Seattle thing now on our slides, I can't abide. But I do. We've been talking football for so long that when he had done Study Like a Champ, and we really wanted to do a book together, using our faculty development experience, we kind of thought this makes a lot of sense. And if people can stomach the American football metaphor, we'll bring in some other sports when we can, but if they can stomach this, it made it more joyful to use that word for us. Regan, what about you? Why champ for
Yeah,
you?
first off, Liz, I noticed that subtle jab at the Packers there. One, you alluded to sometime in the distance. It was that long ago that we won the Super Bowl, but just that's all right. But yeah, but it's even more than that. And don't fear, people. The book's not all football related, but I think it's so interesting to think about this notion of athletics, right? Athletics and being a champion. And sometimes even there are so many times when there are so many elements of what we do as teachers that's related to being on a team, that's related to leading. I mean, a good quarterback manages the clock, right? Every class, we've got to manage the clock. You look at how much time you've got left, you look at how many slides you have left, you look at how much content you have, and you manage the clock. You keep that excitement going, right? So there are just so many different ways that there are these parallels that we thought would make a lot of good sense. And it's not just that though. I mean, and we looked across at a whole bunch of different sports. Even when you look at it, one of the things that you see often is when a player does badly, performs poorly, what happens next? What happens next? Can they bounce back? And I think about that so often when we teachers are burdened, when we teachers have so much going on, when we teachers have a bad class. And notice how easy it is with my accent to link class to pass. Just like a bad pass that gets intercepted in a bad class, you've got to go back and do it again, right? And how do you do that again? And even this last season, you saw many teams where, yeah, I'll even say it, those Chicago Bears playing us Packers. The first half, they did horribly. The quarterback throws interceptions, the quarterback fumbles, but they come back and win. And not every quarterback can do it. Not every team can do that. Not every teacher can do that. But I think that's the deal, right? And I think it's so interesting to see those parallels and look at what we learn. And again, in the spirit of timeliness, right? Look at last night. Alyssa Liu, wow, what a story, right? And here, even more importantly, even closely related to us as teachers and having a tough time because she retired from the sport. Why? Mental health, right? She said she was being forced to do too many things. She said she felt like she didn't have control. She felt like her life was too scheduled and regimented and she couldn't explore. And she walked away. And then 2 years ago, she was skiing, enjoyed it, and she comes back. And last night, sorry, recorded people, spoiler, right? But last night, right, she wins gold. And when you listen, and I urge you, listen to her interviews. It's all about facing mental health. It's all about talking about mental health. And we as teachers don't talk about mental health enough. We don't talk about our failures enough, right? We don't talk about those interceptions and the fumbles enough. We feel this pressure. We feel this pressure to be champs, right? But I think I love Alyssa's example of saying, hey, look, you can do that, but once you love yourself. And just one more thing I just have to say, you just watch clips from last night and her final performance. She smiles. She is excited. She is happy. Right before she starts her final run in the Olympics, she is smiling. She's having a good time. And that's what I try and be as a teacher. It's stressful, right? The world is crazy, but I want to enjoy it. And I think that's what today is all about, is enjoying it. All right. So I've shuffled, let's deal, right? We've separated this time with you together into three main parts. Uh, Gentle sports analogies there. We're going to start with a warm up, and I'm going to take the lead on defining what teaching champs really are. And then Elizabeth is really nicely going to take us through some training tips. So we'll talk about efficiency with teaching, and then of course at game time, right, to go back to that smiling that I mentioned. And I'm serious. Watch the Alyssa Liu clips. It's just heartwarming, right? How can we teach happier, right? How can we teach happier? So that's what we're going to do. All right. All right, so let's start with some warm-ups. And it's always good to warm up. Uh, Even in teaching, I was just telling my graduate TAs yesterday that sometimes when I'm teaching my large 200-person classes and projecting for 2 hours and chatting, I actually literally warm up my voice a little bit. I often, as I am right now, even drinking warm water. This has ginger and lemon in it. You got to warm up. You got to warm up, right? So what are some key warm-ups? Well, first off, here's the big question. Who are the teaching champs? Who are the teaching champs, right? Nice thing to know. If you don't know some of these individuals personally, you should know that the Society for the Teaching of Psychology has a Hallinan Award and a Whiten Award and a McKeechee Award, right? All wonderful teaching champs. Uh, the APF also has the Charles Brew Award, and the 2025 award winner was Karen Brackey. Way to go, Karen. And of course, we've got teaching Sams everywhere. There you go, Elizabeth. I snuck in a little you in a Saints shirt.
I was going to say you snuck in a picture. You should be on this picture,
Yeah.
this
Well,
slide too.
that's the nice thing about having the selected reveal. I know you wouldn't know what's underneath, so there you go, right? I don't think there are any other major surprises, but But that's a place to start is who are the teaching champs? Because, and the reason I mention this, and of course, while I'm shouting out champs, there are the STP award winners. I gave you the names of the awards, and those are the people who got it. So big shout out to the most recent STP award winners, right? And again, read their bios, read why they won. I mean, that's inspiration. You feel a little down, you want something to pep you up, read the bios of those excellent teachers. But we also mention this because a lot of the research out there, and yes, I cannot avoid being a data nerd. I liked evidence, right? And what we did when we put together Teaching Champs is we looked for as much evidence as possible. Yes, as Drew drove in, we have 50 years of experience, but this is not just a wisdom of experience kind of talk. We wanted this talk to be very much a what does the empirical data show? So every single thing you are going to hear in now the next 55 or so minutes is evidence-based. And we mentioned, I like to start here with the teaching champs because interestingly enough, a lot of the evidence, especially about 10 years ago, was evidence from interviewing teaching champs and their students. So if you're curious, what's been done? That's a whole area of scholarship. Who are the award winners? What do they do? What do they students say about them? And that's one whole line of things, right? But that's just one line of things. And we really dug in to try and look at what are the other ways we can figure out who the teaching champs are. So we want to focus on, well, how do we make teaching champs, right? If we want to be a champ, or how if we, and here champ, AKA effective and efficient, right? And efficient's pretty important too, but really we want to be effective teachers, right? I think in our book, and I mean in our sense and the book, being an effective teacher is being a teaching champ. And you can look around and, you will see that for the longest time, there are places people looked. So, for example, especially when I worked in the Center for Teaching and Learning and went to faculty development conferences, and I would say to people, hey, what do you think makes a teaching champ? They'll say, oh, yeah, Chickering and Gamson, think Chickering and Gamson, seven principles. And I say, yeah, all good principles. I like them. But the nerd that I am, I did a little digging and I said, how did these seven principles actually come about? And the story's sort of interesting, right? Chickering and Gamson got together a bunch of very smart educators and administrators, and they got together for 2 days in Wisconsin, and they had a special charge. The charge was come up with some good practices for education. And they sifted and winnowed because back then, when they did it in the 80s, there was no computer systems and definitely no AI pulling things together. But for 2 days, they sifted and winnowed through what was out there and they came up with principles. And a particularly interesting psychological tip of the hat, Chickering and Gamson said, how many principles should we have? And instead of going with the emergent number of principles, they said, you know what? In psychology, there's that memory thing, 5 ± 2. Let's go with 5 ± 2 principles. And that's how they came up with seven principles. Now, this doesn't mean those seven principles aren't great, but it's not exactly the most empirically driven way, but there's some great advice that you can get from there. Likewise, there's a lot in cognitive science, in cognitive psychology, on what are some key principles. And if you take a look at Barak Rosenstein came up with some great principles using a somewhat similar method to Chickering and Gamson, which is what's out there, what could be used. So if you want to be a teaching champ, you can do exactly that. You can look at Chickering and Gamson, you can look at Rosenstein, you can look at what's out there. The Society for the Teaching, STP, in 2011 got together a task force to even take a look at this question more directly. And chaired by Aaron Richman, for 2 years, this committee worked on what are some principles of model teaching. And they looked over Chickering, Gamson, and Rosenstein and all the other things out there, and then pulled together an evidence-based college and university teaching. And this was pretty good because, and yes, I was on there, did some work on that. But I can tell you by looking at that, we still did a lot more of that, what's around there right now. And I think I'll love the stuff pulled together. There are some key model principles there that are a pretty good guideline. But Elizabeth and I wanted to go further. We wanted to go further. We want to say we want to go much broader. We want to go outside psychology. We want to go and see what else is going on. And so we really dug deep into what are those elements of making a teaching champ. And it really starts with knowing what works, right? And that's why when you take a look at a lot of these principles, and they vary. The principles that you see in here, they vary in the amount of empirical evidence that's come with it. There are some smatterings of the wisdom of experience thrown in there. And so a good thing to ask is, how do you know what works? And of course, the biggest thing for us to remember is that even when we want to know what works, we have to remember that just like football, every class is like any given Sunday. You could be a really good team, but you could do horribly on any given Sunday. And I think that's something we wanted to start up by saying up front. You can be passionate, you can be knowledgeable, you can know all about what makes for a good teacher, right? But we've got to give ourselves the flexibility. And I think together with not talking about failures enough, together with not talking about when we're down and when it's so tough to face an email, let alone open your end of term evaluations. Yeah, I'm going to be real here. Those are all real things, right? And we should talk about it more. But so often I've spoken to so many people, and I find myself doing this too, where, we think we're doing a good job and then one class doesn't go right. Okay. And I'm reminded of this fact, this phrase, any given Sunday, where any given class, something may not go right. Something may not go right. Recent anecdote just last week, and this happens almost every term. There's a point in intro psych when right after class, a student will run up and say, "Ooh, today's lecture was really good." And a large part of me goes, what about all the other ones? What I mean, were those crappy? But don't get me wrong, I'll take that. I'll take that. Today's was really good. But I think again, remember, it could be any given Sunday. So and that's why it's sort of interesting to look at resources out there. I mean, I love this. Campbell and team and colleagues went and actually looked at classrooms. And that's why we like putting this book up. In stark contrast to a lot of the other research in great college teaching, they actually send observers to numerous classrooms. And I want to say it's 760 or so different classrooms. And they pull it together and they see that there's a kind of playbook. There is a playbook, right? See, notice all the sports stuff. There's this playbook. And I think we all have a playbook. And I think part of being a teaching champ is really developing your playbook. And so that's what you're going to see as we get to more specifics. It's a teaching champ has this playbook that you have. Elizabeth, do you get that? Oh, Dr. Hammer, this class was so great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I get that. And then I think the same thing. Yeah. But because of my personality, I go, what about last class? What was that? And, make it kind of build some rapport. But one thing I did want to say is that I really appreciate you saying that we don't talk about our failures enough, because it's easy to say, I had this great class and it was so fun. And then there are classes where I can just tell, you can read the faces. This is boring to me. It's boring to them. I don't have the energy. We're going to talk about energy in a little bit, but I don't have the energy to do anything about it right now. And you just, again, next season, right? Next season. But Regan, one thing I did want to add as you're talking about like what we were trying to add in this book is also just like the whole humanity, blending the empirical evidence about effective teaching, efficient teaching, but also bringing in that happiness component about recognizing we're going to be humans that ebb and flow. And if we don't take care of ourselves, how can we really take care of our classes? So I think that's another kind of, because there's been some books that focus just on that. Like there's been a lot of books about burnout and stuff recently. And this is a unique blend to that.
Absolutely. And folks, hang on to that. It's always, keep the finger on your pulse, right? And that's something we'll talk about more explicitly too. I think another issue to keep in mind too is that, and we want to put this up front because I know we are betting that many of you here and listening look at the literature. And we wanted to point out that when you look at the literature, one of the reason it is sort of any given Sunday is because the literature and the research on teaching learning varies, right? And you do have studies that show there's research that shows promise for the classroom. There's research that shows that certain ways are efficacious. And there's also different research that shows certain things are effective. And if you're wondering, wait, what's the difference? Well, this is exactly a nuance we'd like you to think about when you read the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning Psychology or the Teaching of Psychology or Platt or college teaching or any of these books. Pay attention to the fact or to is the study done in the classroom? Is it an in actual class that's been studied, right? And that's where you get the effectiveness of a technique. There's a lot of work, especially a lot of the early cognitive science that are efficacy tests, right? It's done in the lab. I mean, the early retrieval practice was done on Swahili words in the lab, right? It still shows that a technique is efficacious, but there's a big difference between a lab study, an efficacious study, and an effective study that's done in the classroom. And we're pointing this out because far too often, something that looks really good in the lab does not happen in the classroom. So watch out. You may read a study, you may read a lab study and try it in the classroom, and it may not happen. And that goes beyond the any given Sunday. It's really those contextual features. You'll also notice that there's promise there, and that's also so really important to think about. There are some techniques that look very promising, but may not have a complete set of empirical data yet related to it. And my favorite example is UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. Some really good ideas, really good ideas. But as at UDL will say, ideas based on neuroscience with a lot of research promise, but not necessarily, even at this point, enough efficacy studies or effectiveness studies. And the person I want to give a big shout out to for really drawing my attention to this is Rachel Soicher, who in this really neat paper drew my attention, and I think many of us in the field, to the fact that there's a whole science of implementation. And the more I think about why is it that my teaching may vary on any given class, it's the contextual features, and it's also me trying to use techniques that may have been shown to be successful someplace else, but my implementation, and Elizabeth used the key word here, my personality may not be best for that technique, right? So it's our personalities interacting, it's where you teach, it's the context, it's the class size, and so on and so forth. So just some really nice things to keep in mind. Yeah, you may read stuff, and again, I know you all read it if you've come to this. Think about that. Have there been on that? Is it effective? Is it efficacious? And how do you go from there? So really some key, and it's truly warm-ups, right? So really starting at the top, if you want to be a teaching champ, here are some basics, right? And we're going to start basic, and then I'm going to unpack it a little bit more. But yeah, there's no getting around knowing your content. All right. This is particularly difficult in intro psych, right? Unless you're an intro psych author, you really are not going to know all that content really well. I know I have grad students who I train, and Missy, I saw you on here who's done Missy Beers at Ohio State, who's done years of great work training grad students. That's something that they'll say all the time, right? Is boy, I don't know if I want to teach. And I'm just going to throw in some of my personal struggles. I don't know if I want to teach intelligence or motivation. Oh man, sensation and perception is really tough. I'm a social psychologist. I love social. I love personality. Those are great. I love health psych. There are some others. Oh, development's a big tricky one for me. I had to study a lot. I had to do a lot of work on it. So we got to know our content, right? We've got to know about teaching and learning, right? That's what we're giving you in this time. But you've also got to plan each course and each lesson really, really well. And we're going to give you some really nice tips to do each of that.
Regan, I'm thinking about when you talk about your chapters. My first job was at Belmont University in Nashville, which was also a great beginning. Oh my gosh, so teaching focused. But as a social psychologist at a graduate school who had taught advanced research, they assigned me to human sexuality because I could do the relationships chapter. Talk about studying a lot. Wow. Okay.
Well, and again, that's okay. And I think in this day and age, there are a lot of places to get good resources. But you know what makes it tougher, especially in tough times, is when we feel like we have to dive into it like there are no limits, right? And that is our big guiding point here, is that one of the biggest ways to burn out, one of the biggest ways to not be able to smile and be happy and enjoy what you're doing is to go about our academic lives as if there are no limits. And what we'd like to substitute for you is, instead of no limits, we'd just like you to know your limits, right? That's the key. Know your limits. And what do we mean? Yes, people, this is the big slide right here. You can take this and, oh yeah, Elizabeth's coming up with some really great stuff. But here's the deal, right? When you think about what it needs to be a teaching chap, right? Yes, you focus on learning outcomes and you'll see elements of backward design here. But here's something that really, really works for us, right? What really, really works for us is if you are sitting here listening and going, what do I really need to know to be a teaching champ? What is the content? What do I need to know about teaching and learning? Here it is. You need to know about how to come up with learning outcomes. You need to have a good sense of the different instructional methods. Yes, measurement is important, right? Assessment, measurement is important. Are your students learning, right? Be an inclusive teacher, and especially in this day and age, know about technology. Know enough about technology so that you know whether you want to use it or not. All right. Again, there's stuff out there. Now, both in this talk and in the book, we try to make sure that you don't have to read 100 books. But some of you love to read. Some of us love to read, and we do. So here, in good faith, we're sharing some really, really good stuff out there. And there is some really, really good stuff out there. If you look at this and you go, yeah, you know what? Learning outcomes, I need some work. That's the one of our top recommendations, right? Assessing student learning. That's a really good place to go if you need to fine tune your learning outcomes. How about instructional methods? Aaron, lead over Aaron's book, absolutely super. Really, really unpacks instructional methods particularly well. For measurement, finally, classroom assessment techniques came out with a new edition. I think there was a 20-year gap or something like that, but there's a brand new edition of classroom assessment techniques. There's more. If you go, yeah, that's one place I really want to, build my skills, go for Elizabeth Berkeley's learning assessment techniques. Very, very specific stuff you can do in the classroom. Our favorite bets for inclusive teaching and some really good recent entries into this area here. Tracy Addy's What Inclusive Teachers Instructors Do. Wonderful. She has a companion, What Students Say About Inclusive Instructors, which is great too. But just a lot of really neat pragmatic ones in what inclusive instructors do. And of course, something that really got popular in about 2021 or so is Hogan and Sathy's inclusive teaching. There's also some really good stuff on AI, and this AI changes so quickly that teaching with AI is even in a second edition, which just came out in December. So I stuck with the blue first edition cover here because it fitted my graphic better. Yes, I like color, I like a matching, but teaching with AI, a really, really good, nice way to go through. And even though it was written pre-AI, Derek Bruff's in instructional tech, just really, really wonderful for you to think about what do you do, or how do you best use technology in the classroom. And it's really a question of uh, whether it's classroom response systems, whatever. There's technology. How are you going to use it? Right? How are you going to use it? How are you going to do any of these things? And when we think about it, I think we want to say for us, it really, really starts with knowing, honing your philosophy. So when we think about it, first off, big picture people at this point, really the big thing to keep in mind is you want to be able to know your limits, keep these things in mind. Now, for each of these things, there are really, really fun ways to dive into. And I'm just going to give you a sampling of stuff because we only have a little time with you. But for example, here's something I didn't know too much about for the longest time. Script your classes well. Remember in our little funnel, we said plan each class. That's not something I used to think about too much, but there are ways we plan each class. This teaching dimension observation protocol says here are all the different ways that your class can vary, right? And look at this little rubric here. And I put the rubric up here because I look at this and I ask myself, which of these things do I do? How often do I do these things? Because in work with this TDOP, and again, when you get the slides, you can get all of this stuff, and there's a great little manual for it. In work with the TDOP, people observe people's classes and literally for every second or 1 minute shot, checked a point on the rubric of what the person was doing. Talk about fine-tuned, right? One of my favorites here about the rubric, take a look at pedagogical strategies and humor. I had to dive into this one. The rubric for getting a little humor check is Instructor said something, and are you ready for it? At least three people chuckled. Okay. Your mics are off. I hope you people are chuckling so I get my little humor check, right? Thank you, Blake. Thank you, right? But the point here is we got to script our classes well, right? Being a champ and planning classes, we've got to script our classes well, right? Thank you, Frank, for the chat smile, right? But it really comes down to our philosophy. It really comes down to our philosophy. When you think about philosophy, I mean, I really think about, when I look at it, all the stuff out there, and Elizabeth and I have talked about this so much, the big level things are support and structure. Okay, and my release flipped a little bit here, but when I really take a look at the big issue, it's let's support our students, let's give our students structure, right? Especially during the pandemic, when both Elizabeth and I were working in our centers trying to help with emergency learning. Here at the Oregon State CTL, we also looked at what were the factors that led to success in classes. And there were things like compassionate, right? Compassionate teachers had students who succeeded, clear, organized, multifaceted, being flexible, being engaging, right? These are some of the things that I love to use. And I started saying to myself, I want to make sure that I am comfy and my students are comfy, right? And that those are the key things I try to be. I unpack all of that in this little piece that just came out right in the pandemic. But think about your philosophy, right? Uh, what guides you in preparing that class. And I think I love that starting off with compassionate, because if being compassionate and caring is your Ted Lasso belief, right? If that's the thing that's really guiding you, automatically the way you pick instructional methods, the way you measure, the way you're inclusive, all of that will happen. All right. So hone your philosophy. That's a pretty big deal. And I think these elements of comfy here are so important because guess what? If you are comfy, attendance is higher. Attendance is higher in comfy classes. Classes that have compassionate teachers with clear outcomes are higher. And for any of you doing work with belonging and engagement, this is a must read. The Impact of a Sense of Belonging in College. Just a wonderful, wonderful. Here's why being compassionate is so important. I don't know about you, Elizabeth. How's attendance there? I mean, we are at the point of the term where attendance is already starting to drop. Is it pretty good down in Louisiana?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like us, students start off strong and excited, and their energy starts to wane, and then it happens. But you asked me in Louisiana, who just had Mardi
Yeah.
Gras last week, how attendance is. It's going to get better after midterms.
There you go, right? But with Mardi Gras this week, that kind of stuff happens, right?
Exactly.
So, as I wind down here, really the key is assessing ourselves. And teaching champs assess ourselves often, right? And it's not just, oh, are my students getting good grades? That's not it, right? I mean, don't stop there. Oh, my grades are good. It's okay. Yeah. Look, maybe we look for some of those signs. How many of those moments do we have? Whoa, I just got it, right? I get something like this actually in research methods when they finally look at their data or figure out a stats program. So that looks wild, but nope, I've seen that, right? But of course, just seeing students enjoying themselves in class is something so
Regan, I'm
neat.
going to add that we were just doing group activities. This was in my advanced research class, and I can't remember exactly the noise, but it was some like, oh, or like, oh, ah. And I pointed to them and I said, that's the sound of learning. That's the sound of learning.
Yeah.
They were learning from their peers, and
Yeah.
you could just tell this kind of groan and moan and excitement of, oh, I didn't have it right, but now I do. And it was, yeah, that was the sign of learning.
Well, and that's it. That's what you watch out for, And I have to fly my Center for Teaching and Learning hat and say, it's not just student evaluations, right? Effective teaching, teaching champs, it's self-reflection, it's peer observation, it's peer evaluation. And if you don't know how to do all of that, we've got resources for you, right? There are ways to do it. Even self-reflection, taking some surveys that assess how you approach things is the key. And there's a lot out there. In the Teaching Professor, I have one entire essay completely dedicated to all the easily available surveys to assess yourself. So you can just Google my last name and teaching professor, and all of them are now no longer behind a firewall. The teaching professor wonderfully gave me permission to post things on ResearchGate. So if you want one list of, if you've been looking for how do you assess effective teaching for yourself or who you work with, pop onto that article there, a whole bunch of really, really neat stuff. Last couple of things, feedback, right? Feedback, give good feedback. And one of the things I want to say about feedback, and a lot of this comes from this great meta-analysis from a multi-class study, single way, right? There's no single way. And the biggest thing I want to remind all of us, because giving feedback is one of those things that stress us out, one of those things that takes a lot of time. And what this article really did that I really want to put my finger on for all of you is that as long as you give feedback, the delay is not as critical as you actually giving feedback. All right. So you may go, I just can't do it within an immediate amount of time, right? But give feedback. And that's important. And I'm telling you, I was one of those people who was like, you got to do it right away. All right. And I looked at the data, and that's not exactly the case. So again, being a teaching champ, right? Watch your scripts, hone your philosophy, give good feedback. All goes a long way. And then let's leverage psychology, right? Build in study strategies, right? Build in study strategy. If you know retrieval practice is good, do a lot. Design your classes at multiple quiz attempts, right? Overlearning is good. Set your quizzes, set your learning management system so that they are spacing. Do retrieval practice in the classroom. Both these clips of artwork here are from something that I give out on the very first day of class. I don't give out my 14-page syllabus. I give out one page, a syllabus snapshot that highlights here are the things you do that will make you successful. Here are two big cognitive strategies, retrieval practice and spacing. And then I start every class with retrieval practice. We are the teaching champs. We are the designers. We are the instructors. If we know certain things work in cognitive science, let's have our students do it. All right. Whew. Warmed up. I'm warmed up. I hope you're warmed up. And to take us even further, Elizabeth, take us away.
Okay, we had a little technical difficulty, so just bear with us. So you're going to stop sharing?
Yep. And
all
yours.
right. Oh, now I can see faces. Hi, everybody.
Hello,
it's so good to see you. Okay, now I'm going to share desktop 2. You're going to see my little dog in nature for a minute. And then I'm going to play from the current slide, and this should work. Can you only see my slide now? Yay, and I can see you. Oh, this makes me so happy. Okay, hi, everybody. Regan, I learned something from you every time, as you know. But he did kind of indicate that he was getting the special slide with, what you really needed. But I get to do all the take-home tips and practical things that people really love in workshops. So here we go. We're nicely balanced, So I want to take this part first. We're going to do some the training tips. Okay, so we've warmed up. Now let's train, and then we'll do game time. But before I start these tips, I just want to emphasize that when we talk about being efficient, right, we're talking about there's so many hours of the day. We have so many things we'd like to do. We want to have a life. We want to, teach well. We want to be on committees. We want to do these kind of talks, right? When we talk about being efficient, we're not talking about shortchanging our students or shortchanging their learning. First and foremost, as teaching champs, we care about our students and we care about their learning, and that's our touchdown, right? The student learning. So I want to say that as we talk about these efficiency tips, it's not at the expense of student learning, but I do want to tell the story that Regan and I share, which is, as center directors, we were in charge of new faculty orientation. We would often see these new faculty come in, just like our students come into the classroom, excited, passionate. They've always wanted to be a faculty member. And, we'd see them kind of get tired over the course of the semester. And then by the end of the first year, they're even more tired. And then by the end of their third semester, they're just a shell of what they were, right? So we know that they're dealing with a lot, heavy teaching loads, tons of students, student mental health issues, right? things that are going on in our country, in our cities, increased, technological expectations, all these things, they can wear you out. And so it's important to think about, okay, what can we do to manage this? What can we do to manage this? And so that's what we're going to be talking about with efficiency. How can we deal with this so that we don't become shells of ourselves as we get kind of beaten down by certain things, and that we can teach these turbulent times? And it really comes down, Regan mentioned management, right? Sports, all kinds of sports. You have time management, management of the team, management of the plays. It all comes down to management. So I want to talk briefly about three things we can manage. And let's talk about managing our perfectionism, managing our commitments, and managing our calendars. Okay, manage our calendars. These are just three things. There's a lot of other things we have to manage. Our course time, our course planning, like, oh my goodness, we could have done a whole workshop just on each one of these bits of management. But these are three that I think maybe you haven't thought about most recently. So I wanted to talk about these. Let's start with managing your perfectionism, because especially with a sports analogy, this one's tough, right? You get famous people in the sport saying perfection is not attainable, but go for it. Go for perfectionism. Yet, if you look at the research in teaching, people start talking about the tyranny of perfectionism. Right, tyranny of perfectionism. And Boyce, in this classic book, it's a really classic book, Advice for New Faculty. He interviewed over 200, like what were supposed to be like master teachers, best teachers, identify teachers at your school have won awards. And he did a number of different types of colleges and a number of different teachers. And he interviewed and looked at them, and he found that 5% of them were what he called quick start faculty. Quick start faculty. They hit the ground running. It was clear by the end of year one. They're going to rock and roll. They're going to get tenure. They're well on their way right away. Quick start. The other 95% made some common mistakes. They had mistakes in common that really kind of slowed them down in terms of hitting the ground and getting going. And one of the biggest ones, the reason why I want to mention it here with perfectionism, one of the biggest one was over prepping for class, right? And it's kind of amazing to be at a teaching workshop. It's sponsored by the Society for Teaching Psychology, and I'm saying prep less. But I'm saying prep less, right? Here's the thing, is that what he found, and then there's been other work since then, is that by over preparing for class, it leads to defensive teaching. And it stems from perfectionism. I have to know everything. I can't say I don't know. I can't say I don't know twice in a class for sure. And so I've got to know everything. I've got to be perfect. I've got to be perfect content knowledge. Now, again, I'm not saying don't know your stuff. I'm saying, we tend to over prepare, especially in classes, especially like in chapters in the intro site book. We feel unusual, maybe iffy about or a little rocky about. We tend to over prepare. And what happens is when we over prepare, we feel the need to get through it all. Right. And so then student questions start to annoy us. Student interruptions start to annoy us. Think about this. And I think it's gotten worse since PowerPoint, right? When Boyce did this, I think it was a little or maybe right on the edge of PowerPoint. But I prepared 25 perfect slides. The font is perfect. The come-ins, the appearance, the transitions, everything's good. And now because the students had such good questions, I've got 10 minutes left and 15 slides left to go. What do? We are going to power through those slides, right? Dang it, I made those slides. I'm going to do it. So it just leads to defensive teaching. It also leads to not modeling curiosity and kind of intellectual learning in the classroom, modeling it for our students. We know it all and we are going to give it to you. It forces us into that sage on the stage model instead of more interactive kind of learning over preparation. And it is also really inefficient. So manage your perfectionism. Ask yourself, I am encouraging you to ask yourself next time you're preparing for class, have I prepared enough? Again, not saying don't know your stuff, but have I prepared enough? Do I have enough slides? Can I teach less better? Okay, and do this because it really does lead to defensive teaching. So what Boy said is limit your prep. He actually had a advice like, the first time you teach class, limit your prep per lecture to, 1 or 2 hours. Like limit it, set a time. This is how much I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do the best I can. Okay. And then I'm going to have a great class because I'm going to be focusing on other things. Also, by limiting your prep time, you do focus on the big things and don't get lost in the minutia. And some of the minutia is formatting of our slides. Okay. So limit your prep time. That is one thing for managing your perfectionism and recognizing it yourself, recognizing it. Okay, this is my perfectionist tendency kicking in. Where is this coming from? And reflect on where it's coming from. Okay, also managing your commitments and your calendar. I'm putting these two together here. If you've not read this book yet by Catherine Denial, I highly recommend you read it. It is so good. I mean, it's just one of those, I started reading it and I just I don't know, I just loved it. And I read it, I don't know, was it a year and a half ago or whenever it came out? And it changed a lot about the way I teach. I've been teaching a long time. I have got a great syllabus. My syllabus is awesome. I worked on it. I read, Hogan and Sathi inclusive pedagogy, and I have an inclusive syllabus. When I read this book, it changed my syllabus a lot, and it definitely changed my course calendar a lot. But let's start by talking about commitments. Okay, commitments. What she argues in this book is she kind of goes against the advice of just learn to say no. She said so often we're told learn how to say no. Right? You're going to get asked to do a lot. Learn how to say no. And she kind of flips it a little bit in a really nuanced way and says, learn how to guard your yes. Because we can't say no to everything. And I am grateful I didn't say no to so many things in my career because that's how I got here today, is by saying yes to things along the way. Very first thing, Regan, I'm going to ask you, what's the very first thing you did for STP? The very first thing I did for STP was I was the co-chair of the awards committee. I didn't have any idea what that was, but I said, yes, I'll do that. I want to find out about STP. What was the very first thing you did?
Assistant program chair for APA programming, actually.
Okay.
20-something years, 25 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And aren't you glad you said yes?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Meeting all these great people, right?
Exactly. So she just said, just saying learn to say no is kind of a negative frame, but learning how to guard your yes is kind of a more positive frame, right? And what she argues for us to do, and I have done this, and it has led me to say yes to something, and it's led me to say no to something. But she says, what you should do, or what she advises to do, is ask yourself why you want to say yes. So if you get asked something, you're like, oh, I should do it, or I want to do it, or I'm thinking about doing it. Why do you want to say yes? Is it out of a sense of obligation? Like, I owe this organization something, I owe this person one, I owe this, it's an obligation. Is it FOMO, right? Oh, I want to say yes to this because everybody's going to be online and I want to be online with them. I don't want them to forget about me. I don't want to forget about them, right? So this is fear of missing out. Is it, and this is a very common one, if I don't say yes now, I won't get other opportunities. If I don't say yes now, they won't ask me again. First of all, I'm going to tell you with our 50 years combined experience, that is not true. If you're a good worker, they're going to always ask you again. So don't worry, take that one off your little heart right now. Okay. Or is it that I'm genuinely interested, or that I feel like I could bring something, that it would have this? She said, really, really know know why you're saying yes. Because she said that way it will just help you prioritize. There are going to be times when I'm going to say yes to something out of obligation, because I do have obligations to people. I do have obligations to organizations who have really helped me. But knowing that then gives me a little bit different mind frame of, okay, if I say yes to this out of obligation, I'm going to have to say no to this one out of I'm genuinely interested, because I can't do everything I want to do and still fully Mardi Gras, right? So, and go to Saints games. So, so it helps you just kind of prioritize and balance. And I just found that a wonderfully freeing kind of way to look at this. Guard your yes. And her little summary advice for her now for denial, she said, if it's not a strong yes with a good motivation, then it's a hell no. Okay. And I like that. Okay. So now let's talk about managing your calendar. Now, your calendar, this is not a time, again, we could do a whole session, way more than an hour and a half on time management, right? So I'm not going to do, the whole time management workshop in the time I have left. I'm just going to say a few things about your calendar. Okay, a few things about your calendar to help you remember what we're doing here in this training tips is being efficient so we can make it through the day and then we're going to be happy. The one thing that I would say first about managing your calendar is do not wait for the elusive big chunks of time to do your real work. They don't exist. Do you know when my writing day is? Fridays. So what am I doing now? I'm not writing. Right? I met with Regan this morning. I'm on task force for Drew Christopher, and we have a 2-hour meeting this afternoon. Right? I'm doing this. So the elusive big chunks of time do not exist. Don't wait on them. Now, do build them in, protect them. I have writing time that I do protect very well most of the time. Okay, I do have writing time, but you can't just wait on them to come to you. Okay, you have to bring them to you, and then you have to make use of little times. If you want to do, real scholarship, real reading, whether it's reading about teaching, reading in your discipline, if you want to do that, you're going to have to do it a little bit every day because we do have a little bit of time every day. Okay, and you're going to prioritize it and build it in. But if you're just waiting, I can only write when I've got 4 hours, well, good luck. Good luck to you. Doesn't exist. Yeah, Regan, do you want to say anything about that? About big chunks of time? You're one of our most prolific authors. Yeah.
I think it really. I think it's finding out what eats your time is the big thing. I would say is look at those things that waste your time and do less of them. That's one of my biggies.
You set me up. Okay. Next thing is do your big task first. You have that grant proposal, your faculty or VITA update, whatever they call it, your school, your chapter that's due for your book, whatever your big thing is, do your big thing first, right? It's the analogy of you've only got this much time in a bucket. If you put the big rocks in, the little pebbles can fall in. If you put the pebbles in, that big rock's not going to fit. Do your big stuff first. We don't want to do our big stuff first because our big stuff's harder. It's harder than the little stuff. And the little stuff's so rewarding. I replied to that email. Yay! I replied to another email. Yay! Right? That's you can waste your highest energy time doing that, which leads me to exactly what Regan said. And the last thing I want to say about the calendar is schedule your email time. Y'all, email. Am I right? The bane of our existence, email. But it's so rewarding to get down to as close to inbox zero as you try to do. Some people are like, I don't try. Some people are like, I try to stay with 100. Whatever you're trying to do, so rewarding to check that off rather than, think and really be creative and, do this. It's how we work. So, we're students at heart too, right? So schedule your email. Schedule it. When you do your schedule, build an email time and then do the hardest thing. I think about some of the football players in the Saints and I see them. Alvin Kamara, he stands on a balance ball and juggles with one leg up while he's pumping weights. Like he does crazy, crazy stuff. The hardest thing we have to do is, I'm making a big muscle. The hardest thing we have to do as faculty is not check our email when we have 5 minutes or we have 15 minutes, because that 15 minutes you can do those, something little. Okay, so you've got to do it. If you feel like, oh my gosh, my department or my students or my whoever is going to freak out if I don't check my email, give them your schedule. Role model it for them. It's a great thing to do for our well-being. So role model it, give them your schedule and say, this is my email schedule and this is when I check it. And they might be grumpy about it the first time and then they'll go, oh, she was serious. Okay, and then do it. I wish I could say I was always good about it, but that's my advice. Make a schedule, stick to it, get your real stuff done because your real stuff's more rewarding, even though it might not be the dopamine hit that you want in the moment. All right. And that allows you then to take advantage of those little, 15 minutes of time. You can get a lot of online grading done when you do it 15 minutes at a time, or you can waste your time doing email that you could have done when you're kind of, brain dead at the end of the day. Okay, so managing your perfectionism, managing your commitments, managing your calendar. And again, there's a whole bunch of other time management tips that we could get into, but I'm going to stop there for now. So let's talk about another drain on our time, and probably you can put in the chat if you really love it. I'd love, I would love to see that. But dealing with grading, probably not our favorite part of our job, but a huge part of our job, right? A huge part of our job. And we have been grading in the United States since the 1800s. It is our student, how I try to think of it is it is our students' paychecks. Like, yes, I don't like grades. I don't like grading. I don't like students being grade focused. I just want them to come in and learn. All right, fine. When's like the last committee that meant nothing and there was no consequence and there was no real, anything to it? And you're like, I'm just going to get in there and serve, even though it means nothing and they're going to put this in the trash. No, we got to have something, right? Some outcome, some consequence, and students do too. And in our higher ed system, for most of us, it's their grade. It's their grade. So that's reality. So let's just live in reality here. Students are going to, we're showing them what we prioritize about their learning by how we assess them for their grades. Just like our universities are showing us, or our institutions are showing us how we are, what we're prioritized for by giving us paychecks. Okay, so, but we also know there's a lot of problems with grading, and there are some really good, now the whole practice of ungrading, alternatives to grading. There's a lot of good research on there. Grading can hinder learning, and grading can just absolutely make teaching a bummer, right? So there's a lot of negative stuff around grading, yet we have to do it. So how can we do it most efficiently as teaching champs? First is evaluate your assignments. Evaluate your assignments. Go back to your authentic, and I love thinking about authentic learning objectives. If you have not done this in a while, Regan mentioned learning objectives in the warm-up, like go back and look at your objectives. So many of us, at least I did an intro until I, started becoming teaching center director. I just inherited them from somebody at Belmont when I first started teaching. And then I just took them with me back to New Orleans. And then when I really look at them, I'm like, ooh, that one's good. That one, I don't even know what that means. Or, really look at your authentic learning objectives and then do that little backwards design. Do your assignments match your authentic learning objectives? When I first gave that a real honest eye, some of mine didn't. And I'm like, oh, this is busy work. Why would I make busy work for them that then becomes busy work for me? And I got rid of some response papers and replaced it with something else. Okay, consider group assessments, right? Are there things, especially when you think about the workforce and how collaborative, working in teams is so important. And now we're getting a COVID generation who has not been used to working with people. Are there assignments that could be just as good, because we're not shortchanging students? Are there assignments that could be just as good, and yet they could be a group instead of individual? And that way you only have to assign group. Can you use class time to do this? I do reading guides. I'm looking at the time here, defensive teaching. I did these slides. I got to get through them. Okay. So that for my reading guides, a lot of times I get them into groups. They're talking about the reading guides and I go around and I check them off, and I've done the grading by the time I walk around the room, because it's a little pass fail, thing. So can you use class time? Use effective rubrics. Again, we could do a whole workshop on rubrics, but some of our rubrics have gotten out of control. Does anybody have that? Like rubrics that's like, oh my God, it is 3 pages long and it's so detailed because I'm so transparent that now it takes me like an hour to, yeah, what I'm talking about. Okay, study up on your rubrics. Rubrics are a great way to kind of deal with grading, and they are transparent and they are fair, but make sure they're effective and they're not, they're not actually being counterproductive. Block out grading time. Back to the calendar. I've got grading time in my calendar, just like I have, my class time and my office hours. I've blocked out grading time to get it done. Procrastinating grading makes it even more painful. And doing something when you're not happy, this is not fair to students, right? This is not fair to students. And then finally, consider alternative grading. There's all kinds. Ungrading, and I put this website down here, Jesse Stommel's website. He wrote a really good book on ungrading. There's all kinds of practice on ungrading. He's got a whole bunch of essays there. Go look at it. It's great. He talks about the practice of ungrading. Again, we could do wow, how many workshops on that, right? I'm not going to talk about the specifics of ungrading, and not everybody's ready to be there. He talks about, Stommel talks about the spectrum of ungrading, right? That you can go all the way from fully ungrading to just dabbling in it. But there all are alternatives. So if you've been really getting bummed out about your grading, take some time this summer and read about it. Read about it. See what matches your authentic learning objectives and your student population. Okay, but we encourage you to do this. All right, efficiency. Then, though, so far we've talked about stuff that's been around for a while. Then, November 2022, hell broke loose. OpenAI dropped ChatGPT. First, generative AI, right? And just did it overnight. One day we were normal professors teaching normal people, and the next day, boom, this is what my classroom looked like. What is this? What are we going to do with this? Yeah, it's AI's always been around for, not always been around. It's been around for a long time. It's been around since the Roomba, which I think the Roomba debuted, a little vacuum, like in 2002. I mean, it's been around a lot. We now, like there was that whole study about people don't have the same cognitive maps because of GPS. That's AI. Your little nest in your house is AI. Your car's got AI. Oh my goodness. When did it start with emails that it could like finish if I say thanks and it'll say very much, right? And I can just hit tab. That's AI. It's been around. But generative AI, the way it is now, has not. And it happened quick. And we are dealing with this as an institution. I mean, as an academy. Now, we're all grieving something. Again, this is not an AI workshop, although I love doing those. But we're all grieving something, whether it's writing, critical thinking, whether it's that assignment we've loved that we've given for 25 years and now AI can do it. We're grieving something. That's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to use AI for us. How can we be effective? Because AI is here. It's going to be here. The workforce wants us to prepare our students on how to use it. And if we don't play with it, we are not going to be able to teach them how to use this. And we are already behind. We're already behind. Okay, so again, this comes to Bowen and Watson's book, now in its second edition, a great book. I just want to pull out some of the things they recommend that we do have AI do for us. Draft a summary of my project for me, for my report. Now again, some of the, if you are me, and I'm making eye contact with some people, you go, when you read that, okay? I'm not saying I can do all these things yet, but I'm saying people are doing these things, and then they have time to do some other things. I'm just telling you there. Analyze this report for weaknesses, right? This is one of the first things we said we're going to have students do with AI. We're going to say, write this essay, now have AI analyze it, and then you analyze its analysis. But have you ever done it for one of your works? Analyze it. See what it comes up with. Make my bio sound more, I don't know, impressive, caring, formal, informal, inclusive, young, hip, I don't know, whatever. Okay, how can I make these instructions clearer, more supportive, more transparent, more inclusive, etc.? Create discussions, create an active learning. Oh, I asked it to this for a workshop that I did. Create an active learning about, it was something in developmental, maybe it was about like sensory motor. And it gave me minute by minute, like here's what you could do. It gave me discussion questions, etc. I like Perplexity AI. Somebody can put that in the chat. That's my favorite one to use. Does it make me uncomfortable? Heck yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. But I also know that I want to serve my students. Okay, so those are some efficiency things. And I hope that we have time or people can put in the chat other things you do for efficiency. Now let's talk about, so training tips. Now let's talk about being in the game, teaching happy. So Flower, I'm so glad you're here, joyful with me, my friend. Let's talk about teaching happy. And in this sports analysis, it is keeping your love of the game. How many of you have heard this? Like in the figure skating, right? Loving skating again, gotta love the game, Hopefully, and I don't even have to say hopefully, if you are spending your Friday at a teaching conference, you taught that first class and said, this is what I want to do, right? Doesn't mean every day you go into class and you're like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite. I'd rather be doing this than a parade. No, but we got into it because we're passionate. And so how do we keep that love of the game? As I go through this, think about your best teachers. Think about your best teachers because they loved the game. That's how you remembered them. You might remember your worst too. We're not going to talk about them, but your best one loved them. And that's why you remember them. They were enthusiastic and they sparked something in you to love it too. Now, the interesting thing about passion, teaching passionately and enthusiasm is it has to be authentic. There's some interesting research about inauthentic enthusiasm. Yay, we're here today. Students that can kind of push students in the wrong direction, can push them in the wrong direction. So finding that genuine passion again, let's find it. And this last little bit here, it is hard to find when this is your life. Anybody else, this is your life, right? You got on one side your classes and everything that's going on and every student issue that you're dealing with. And now I can't even. Okay, on the other side, you have your family and your work, and then just want to do some fun things. You've got this, and eventually, these two things are going to meet in the middle. These two flames are going to meet in the middle. You're burning your candle at both ends, and that leads to burnout, right? And there's a really good book. Oh, Regan, do you remember the author's name of the burnout? Who did all the burnout?
Unraveling Faculty Burnout?
Yes. Yes, that's the name. That's the title. Unraveling Faculty Burnout. Great, very practical book. But we know that it's in the news. Faculty and staff at every level, all the way from K-12 through graduate programs, are burned out. Right? Higher education is struggling. We are burned out. This is especially true for some populations than others. Burnout has hit this. It's kind of at all-time high since COVID. So if this is your metaphor, if this candle right now resonates with you, what happens to the burnout, of course, is we get exhaustion, we get cynicism, we feel like we can't do our job as well. And I want to just mention cynicism because it's the scariest one in higher ed to me. It's the scariest one in higher ed to me. It is because cynicism, you start to have negative attitudes, and it starts usually towards your administration. Right? Get mad at the administration. They're burning me out. They're doing things outside of my control that are hurting me. And then it starts going to your colleagues who aren't doing their work. And those colleagues are not pulling their weight. And I'm not going to be on that committee because that colleague has not been on that committee. And so why should I have to do all the work? But eventually, y'all, it trickles to your students. And students are lazy. And students are not pulling their weight. And they are not prepared. And why do we even get these students at this university? And if you've hit that stage, it is time to take care of your burnout or get out of the classroom, right? We serve all the students, and all of our students, we are there to uplift them and get them learning, right? And if we go in with those attributions, because of cynicism, a burnout, it's a natural symptom of burnout, then we're in trouble, okay, when it starts to trickle down there. And if you need more motivation if you're dealing with burnout or feel like you might be, there's now evidence they're talking about burnout being called job-related depression. That is actually, they're kind of talking about being kind of diagnosed as depression. All right, so add to that techno-stress, right? And I'm keeping in mind the time, y'all. I see what time it is. Techno-stress, we are being asked to do more. Y'all, we don't even get snow days anymore. I never got snow days. We don't even get hurricane days anymore. If there's a hurricane coming, they say take 24 hours to get to where you need to go and then get online and do this. Like, what? Just change my class to hybrid like that? Like there's no difference in the pedagogy? I had a dean ask me this semester, a student had to go to the hospital, which is I feel very compassionate about, but said, can you just make the class remote, asynchronous for her? I'm like, no, this is a face-to-face class and we're in the middle of the semester. Anyway, okay, there's all kinds of things. There's a whole, if you've not read about techno-stress, there's interesting stuff there and it's just on the increase. Whole nother type of stress, techno-stress. Now, here, these are the things that lead sources of, I know there's a lot of words here, but these are the things that lead to burnout. You know them: lack of control, unclear expectations, chaotic work life, increased workload. But and those things are out of our control for the most part, right? But there are lifestyle things that are under our control. And that's what I want to talk about here. I've got this beautiful, Regan, thank you for finding this picture, this beautiful plate. I want you to think about your plate. And we don't have time to do this activity, but I would like you to think about this after the talk. draw your plate. It can even be a square plate if you prefer, and put everything on your plate in your life that you want to have at your feast, right? Is that do you exercise? Put exercise on your plate. Do you need to take care of your pets and walk your dog? Put that on your plate. Do you need to get your tenure portfolio done? Put that on your plate. Whatever you've got, put it on your plate. And then really kind of be honest about the balance and see how you feel about it. And then think about, okay, what do I need to prioritize to keep my love of the game, right? Because if our plate is too far out of whack, then we become, vulnerable to burnout, vulnerable to sadness, vulnerable to cynicism. So look at your plate and then be honest, because your university, high school, community college, they're going to let you work as much as you want to work. They are. So you think about, what do you want so that you can do what you want to do, which is teaching, so you can do that well, right? So that you can do it well and be there for your students. Great quote I got is, you can't light yourself on fire to keep other people warm, right? So you got to be there for yourself to be there for your students. And there are all kinds of ways. I hope because I don't have time to go through this, because I do want to talk about, we've got two more things that are a little more important, I think, but I do want you to take a screenshot of this. This is a Roger Walsh in 2011, came out with an American Psychologist article that changed my life. It's called Lifestyle and Mental Health. And he talks about 8 lifestyle factors that we had enough evidence for in 2011 that shows that these are just as important as like therapy, drugs, in treating kind of like, mild depression, cognitive impairment, well-being, all kinds of well-being, well-being things. And so since this has taken off, right? This has taken off in health psychology, and people talk about the TLCs, therapeutic lifestyle changes, and they are here, the 8. Since this time, he's added, and other people in this field have added sleep. Sleep is one that just the data wasn't strong enough for sleep in 2011 to put it in there. But it is, oh, shoot, what page am I on? Here I am on my notes. It is move your body. Move your body. You sit in front of screens all day. If you don't know Body Electric, the podcast of NPR, it's called Body Electric. Get on it. That's all I'm going to say. Feed your brain. Don't do foodish products. Michael Pollan just came out with a new book, by the way. Spend some time in nature. Best way to deal with techno stress. Build your social support. Find your village. It takes a village on every aspect. We've got our teaching village here, but you also have faculty development villages. You've got disciplinary villages. Find your support people and use them. Have some fun. Have some fun in life. Like, ask yourself, when's the last time you said you had fun? Because it should be recently. If you're going to keep that joy, right? Keep that joy. And when have you had fun in the classroom, right? That's a lot of fun. Attend to your spiritual side, especially expressing gratitude. It is hard to be cynical when you're grateful. I'm just going to say that. Practice kindness. Okay, practice kindness and get your Z's, right? Those are things that are under our control that keep us happier and keep us teaching happier. Okay, Regan, I'm going to turn this slide over to you. Yeah, we've got yours right, and one more. So we got 2 minutes.
The key point is, to underline, Elizabeth, what you just said is, when you teach, lean into your passions. Try and teach something you're passionate about. And Elizabeth, if you want to click forward to the actual next and one more, and if you can find something that excites you. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to teach a passion course, Gods, Ghosts, and Goblins, Understanding Belief. It's the most fun I had. And I do it. Try and do that. And I think if you can find a class that you're passionate about, that's automatically going to change and improve and give you a wonderful boost to the system as well. So yeah, that was, I wanted to squeeze that in there.
Thank you. And then, yes, lean into your passion. And this is our last take-home point of this talk and of the book too, is that we really, with all of our years of experience, we really think there's actually one thing. It comes down to one thing. When have you been to a workshop that promises one thing? But we think it comes down to one thing, because if you have this one characteristic, you are going to want to be effective. You're going to want to assess yourself. You're going to want to know better practices. You're going to want to read this. You're going to want to do that. You're going to want to be efficient so that you can actually do it, because, even though we are Wonder Woman, Superman, you still have only so many hours in the day. So you're going to want to be efficient, and you're going to want to be happy and take care of yourself for students. Okay. So anybody can guess what this is. So one last thing, and it is like your students. If you like your students, then you are going to want to be there for them. You're going to want to be the best for them. And that, my friends, is going to make you a teaching champ. Am I right, Regan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Make that drives you, right? That drives you. Super stuff.
Okay, I think we're 1 minute over, but I'm turning over to you. Here's the QR code for the slides if you would like this. Here were the champions this year. There's always next season. Our Saints, finalists for Rookie of the Year. Here's our email address. We'd love to hear from you. Regan, I'll let you have the last word.
It's just, yes, there's a lot of stuff here, but I really love what you focused on, especially at the end, those ways of, being, and find that thing that makes you passionate. And, the moment you find that, then just like, listen, Lou last night, winning that gold, you're going to go into the classroom smiling. And when you smile, the way your students will deal with you is going to be completely different, and you'll all be smiling together. So do a lot more smiling. Happy Friday, and thank you so much, Blake and everybody for who put this together. It has been a thrill for the two of us to be here. Thank you so much.
Friends, can we give some applause and some recognition of those amazing thoughts? Y'all can't see it. I've been filling up a notebook over here of all these tips and things that I'm really excited to jump in and explore on the on-demand video that we've recorded for the session. So thank you for that. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Regan. That was awesome. I don't know if y'all know this, and a brief story, and then I'll send you into your respective places and where we need to go next. But I was listening to a Psych Sessions podcast episode this last fall, and Regan, you were on there, and Garth, the Psych Sessions host, was hitting you with all these different questions. And to use another sports analogy here, Garth and you were talking about this forthcoming title this June that's up here on the screen. And you made a reference in that conversation that one of your favorite metrics, one of your favorite sports metrics was yards after catch, right? And your reference was, hey, any good wide receiver can catch the ball. It's what they do with the ball after they catch it. And here's what we got, friends. And I'm going to bring this all in right now. Elizabeth and Regan, they are throwing you Teach Like a Champ, and included in here are separate chapters that they've been able to highlight. So they're going to throw you Motivation and Inspiration in Chapter 1. They're going to throw you Fundamentals of Good Teaching. They're going to throw you Capturing Effectiveness. They're going to throw you How to Increase Your Efficiency, and they're going to throw you How to Teach Happier, How to Teach Better. So your job now, being on this Zoom, is to do something once they've thrown you this. Right? So catch this title, pre-order it, have it in your mailbox by this June. APA Publishing, our sponsor, is giving you this promo code of VCT 15 for 15% off. Right? Get this title, do something with this amazing work that Regan and Liz have given us, and let's make our classrooms, let's make our departments a much happier place as we are learning how to teach like a champ. So Regan, Elizabeth, that was awesome. I appreciate both of you so much and have so many amazing insights that I got to follow up on after this. So we appreciate you, and this teaching community is much better for everything we just heard. So thank you both so much. All right, I have alluded to what's happening next, so let's shift gears there. If, my friends, you did not see what I just put into the chat, I'm going to put this back up on the screen. You can access the schedule for the rest of today. So in the chat, I've given you the link to Teach Like a Champ if you want to find that. You can also find access to our schedule that we have today, and you can find access to the VCT program if you want to learn more about these sessions. So I'm actually over there on the VCT program right now, and I want to give everybody a heads up. In the next 6 minutes, the opportunities you have available over in Zoom Room B, not this one, in Zoom Room B, Sarah is going to be talking about applying universal design principles with generative AI for a culturally responsive classroom. So if that is a title that you are excited about, then you'll click Zoom Room B and you'll hop over there and hear all the great insights that Sarah Strand has to provide. If you're going to stay in this room, then you're going to hear from Frank. And Frank's going to be talking about engaging modern examples for introductory psychology. And so that is what's happening in this room here in the next 5 minutes. Nothing you need to do, you just need to hang out. So that is what we have in store. If you need to leave at any point today, all these are getting recorded. So these are available to you on demand. And that is something that we like to provide for those of you that have class or other obligations. You know, life happens. You have an opportunity to come back and catch these. So that's what we have in store. Final shout out and thanks again to APA Publishing for making this event happen and your generous sponsorship. You are very much appreciated. And I hope everybody in here, even if they didn't win one of the signed copies that we gave away early, they are able to pick up a title and get that on their shelf and pass it around their departments and try to help other folks teach like a champ. So that's it for me. I'm going to head to the waiting room and jump around and see folks. Kruti Surti, VCT's steering committee, is going to take over. And we're going to get some amazing insights from Frank here in a moment. So if you got questions, drop them into the chat.
Blake, before you go, a couple of people in the chat had said the QR code that Regan put in that last slide for the slides didn't work. So we'll just get you the slides and you can do what you want to with them.
Brilliant. Happy to do it.
Thanks, everybody. So nice seeing your faces. Bye.
Thank you, Liz. All right, my friends. We should have, hopefully, everything in the chat with links on where folks need to go. Kruti, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my microphone. I'm going to let you turn on yours and set us up for our next facilitator with Frank. So, folks, if you are needing to get up and stretch, we encourage you to do that. That is the benefit of having these little built-in buffers, is that we want you to stretch your legs and do all the things that are going to help you as we're going through these next few sessions. So take that stretch break, take that opportunity to go get a drink of water, stare at something besides a computer screen, and then come back and we'll have some great opportunities. So, Kruti, I am done chatting. Yep. It is your time to shine, friend, and I'm stopping the report and giving you that opportunity to kick things off